I think we've all gone through this with our aging parents already, no matter how old they are. I don't like the way you're driving.
And just wondering, is it okay for them to, and safe for them
We
to
want to make sure
continue
they're
driving?
safe.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. We get a lot of questions about options and maybe what suggestions we might have for making that decision or helping them make that decision. Today, we're bringing in Driver License Division Chief Sherry Gibson from the Texas Department of Public Safety. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So what do we do if we feel like our parents shouldn't be driving anymore?
Well, there are a couple of options. Obviously, the first thing you do is you talk to your parents about that. Some may be more cooperative than others about not driving any longer. But if you feel like that you need to take some action against their driver license privileges, then there is a process in place, a medical advisory board review process that we use.
Mhm.
And so we ask that the friend, family member, physician, law enforcement officer, whoever it is who has the concern, can reach out to us by email and send the information to mab@dps.texas.gov
Mhm.
and provide the person's information, as much information as you can, so that we can identify the correct record, and then also identify the issues that you think that individual may be having, whether it's mobility, whether it is a medical issue that could cause them to lose control of the vehicle, anything like that. Just give us as much information as you have. Once that's received at the department, then we look at it and do a review, and there's a couple of different options that we may take. We may send the individual a letter and tell them they need to contact their local driver license office to see about doing an additional drive exam, or we may send them directly to the medical advisory board review process, which is partnered with the Department of State Health Services. There's a team of doctors who are assigned to review the driver license cases, and that process involves individuals receiving a packet of information that has to be completed by their physician. And then it is sent back to the Department of State Health Services, and they do a review and make a couple of different determinations. They either say, nope, I think this person is okay, they can continue to drive. They may refer them back to us and tell us that we need to do a comprehensive test, skills test for that individual. Or they could say, no, this person is not capable of driving any longer, which at that point, the department will initiate a suspension action against their driving privileges.
Yeah.
First question would be, is that report that somebody submits anonymous?
It can be anonymous.
Okay.
Obviously, if you're comfortable providing your name and information, that just makes it a little easier for us. But the information can be submitted anonymously. We do get that quite frequently with family members, because if the person requests the information, we have to provide it to them because it is part of their record. So if it's submitted anonymously, then of course they would get the submission, but it would not have any identifying information on it.
Yeah.
And if the parent or the older adult gets the letter that says, we want you to come in and have a test and all of that, and they ignore it, what happens?
So if they don't comply with the request for either the medical information for the MAB or the request to go into the driver license office, we will initiate an action against their driver license privileges. They will get an additional letter. It's not an automatic. There's not one thing that you can do that we automatically say you can no longer drive.
Sure.
But we will send them an additional letter notifying them that they need to either contact the office or provide the medical information. And then through that process, if they still continue to not respond, then we will take the suspension action and we'll send them a letter saying you're no longer allowed to drive.
Gotcha.
Can you just make a reservation and bring a parent in, if they're willing, of course, to take a test?
So anytime you can have a parent voluntarily tested or a child, whichever the case may be. You would just make an appointment at the local driver license office for a test. And then when you go in, explain that you want to have a voluntary test done so that you can just ensure that they're safe to drive.
And that would be the actual driving test.
That would be the actual driving test. Yeah.
Is there ever a point at which you have to answer all those questions again? All the safety, I remember, when I got my driver's license that you have to actually take the written test.
On the written, that is part of the comprehensive test.
Okay.
So if the license and permit specialist determines that they need to go through the comprehensive skills testing process, that includes the driving test, the vision, and the skills test.
Okay, gotcha. And how does the process for renewing your driver's license change as we get older?
So as you get older, there is no automatic testing age. But once you turn 79, if your license expires on your 79th birthday or after, you're no longer allowed to renew your driver license through the mail or online. You're required to go into the driver license office.
Okay.
And, that's mainly so that you can complete all the information and the license and permit specialist can do an evaluation to determine if there's some examinations needed. And then once you turn 85 and your license expires on your 85th birthday or after, then you are allowed to renew, or you're required to renew every 2 years.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
My dad had a medical problem recently and was told, don't drive for a few days. You need to take it easy. And he's like, okay. And I talked to him a couple of days later and said, are you doing okay? He said, yeah, I just got back from running a couple errands. I was like, Dad, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be driving. So many of us are taking care of our aging parents from long distance.
Mhm.
If it wasn't just a short-term thing, if someone had said, if the doctor had said, Mr. Barnes, you're not supposed to drive anymore. Don't drive anymore. And somehow you found out Dad was driving. Can we handle it long distance just like we can do in person as far as the reporting and the getting people involved? Does it matter that we're not right there?
You can report it from wherever. So, in certain instances, like you mentioned, you may be in another state.
Right.
So that report, especially if it's coming from a family member, that can come from anywhere.
Okay.
It's not going to change the fact of how we process them once we start either the medical review or the testing process.
Right.
Now, keeping in mind that you might need to have somebody local help them through that process and get them to the driver license office, depending on what the circumstances are.
Right.
And it is such an emotional issue, I think, for a lot of older adults it's just a sign of independence to be able to drive. But I know that we have so many people in our community who will just have real concerns of mom or dad potentially, causing an accident or having, a situation where they get lost or something like that. And so it is good to know that there are options to be able to try to help. Because nobody wants to take away privileges from them, but just really trying to protect other people as well.
Yeah.
Right. And it is a safety factor. And, when they come into the driver license office, that's for a very short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So they may appear to be fine. They may answer all the medical questions where there's no issues. So the family, friends, and physicians have more information.
Mhm.
So if there is a true concern, it really is critical for them to let us know so that we can initiate that action and save not only their family member, but as you mentioned, it could harm someone else as well.
Yeah.
I know you're not on the police department side of things with DPS, but is there any concern about actually taking the car keys away physically and them getting upset and say, I'm calling the police about this. You can't steal this car from me or anything like that. Should we take the more not realistic, but the approach that you're talking about having them tested as opposed to actually just taking keys away?
I would recommend going through the testing process.
Yeah.
You can take the keys away, but I would contact local law enforcement
Mhm.
just to make sure, because if they say, or if you move their car
Mhm.
and they go and report it stolen,
Yeah.
and then you may not be aware that they reported it stolen, and then another family member's driving the car and they get stopped, and it could create a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
So
Right.
if you were just taking the keys away or moving the car, I would recommend that you contact local law enforcement to
Mhm.
get their direction and their advice on that.
Oh, good suggestion.
And in different states, because we do have people in our community from all over the country, do different states potentially have the age requirements different as far as when you're going to not be able to renew online and or have to come in person or only renew for 2 years? So could every state be a little bit different? So you need to really check to see what your state offers.
That is correct. Every state's laws are going to be a little different. Their requirements will be different. There are still some states, for instance, Texas is a Real ID compliant only state. So
Mhm.
that means our cards have to have expirations. There are still some states that have identification cards that don't have an expiration date because they're not considered a Real ID compliant card.
Gotcha.
So it's always best, if you're in a state other than Texas,
Mhm.
that you don't go by this information. You reach out to that state and find out what their requirements are.
So go wherever the driver's licenses are issued in your state, and
Correct.
that would be the right department to ask if they have the reporting options, the renewal options, and things like that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Great.
Good to
You've
know.
cleared up a lot of confusion. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome.
It's such a touchy subject, but it's good to know that there are some kind of guardrails in place where you do have to renew more often as you get older.
Yeah.
but also just some ways that might help some family members. If you do have some concerns and mom and dad just don't want to listen.
Yeah, and again,
Yeah,
every
it's really
personality
hard.
is different. Every family is different. So it's best just to check and see what's best for you. Hey, if you have any topic you'd like us to discuss, please let us know. Parenting aging parents.